This ChangeNerd webcast is brought to you by Office Hours, a new paid service that gives professionals access to products and information that would otherwise be unavailable or cost extra to the average practitioner. This includes access to live, deep dive sessions on topics that matter, practitioner tools, sample presentations, and group consultation sessions, all for $20 a month. With Office Hours, you can enhance your career with the practical information you need to stay ahead. Click on Events in the ChangeNerd community to view the upcoming events.
Hey everyone, this week we are speaking with Jason Price. He is a subject matter expert on change management, and he works at Core BTS, which is an IT service management company. Jason, thank you so much for having this conversation with us.
Yeah, happy to. I think that there's a need for people to get out and have dialogues with each other on what's going on in the workplace, because you're so busy all week serving somebody else, your internal or your external customers, and you don't get a lot of time to sharpen the saw. So I'm happy to contribute my little tooth.
Yeah, no, this is really cool, and you're absolutely right. Like, a lot of practitioners tell me all the time, Brian, I feel like I'm on an island. So it's really good to connect with other practitioners and share knowledge. So today we're going to talk about how to maximize workforce adoption with enterprise software. Jason, this is something that you and your team is really, really good at. Can you tell us a little bit about Core BTS?
Sure. Let me tell you a little bit about myself that led me to Core. Yep. So, I come from an arts background, theater, nonprofit world, where I spend a lot of time helping charitable organizations with technical assistance, because they just don't know how to fundraise very effectively. They don't know how to build up their memberships, and spend a lot of time helping them programming, and then found myself at Yahoo for 10 years. So enterprise software there was all internal tools as well as the consumer versions of those tools that you probably know and love. And then I transitioned to Core 5 years ago. Core is a Microsoft and a Cisco premier partner. So we specifically go to companies to help them implement these softwares to get them to the cloud. So software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service is what my fellow engineers help build. My angle is helping end users get there and helping businesses understand what the value is of what specifically they're buying. Because they're like, well, what is all this cloud stuff? There's always lots of questions about all of it. Yeah. So that's kind of where I am, and enterprise software is my my world these days, especially on the Microsoft side, Office 365.
Yeah. So Jason, when you're contacted by these companies, they're purchasing technology, they're trying to implement technology, but what's the bigger problem that they're trying to solve? Are they trying to optimize processes, save costs? Like, what's the bigger picture? Why are they looking to technology?
I think that everybody is realizing that email cannot do everything.
Yep.
And it's still a tool that we need to communicate with our customers, but they're looking for better ways to work, to be more efficient, to communicate faster, quicker. As companies are becoming geographically spread, as their workforce becomes more diverse. We've got 5 generations inside the workforce right now, which has never been done before.
Yep.
And we have, and companies are struggling. There's so much change fatigue happening, all these different initiatives. Here's a new tool for this and a new application for that. And it's like, there's this whole kind of, this spread, that they have to crawl between all of these different places to get everything done. And what a lot of the larger cloud companies are doing is trying to consolidate all of that, integrate those, and bring them together. And especially when you're talking about the workflows, is they're trying to improve these things. They're trying to let workers tell everybody, get out of my way so I can do what I need to do. And so we're the get out of the way.
Yeah.
And help to give them the what they need at the particular moment they need it, and then not be around so they can talk to their patient or talk to their customer, make that sale, finish that project.
Yeah.
And push. So as they're looking to push productivity within these organizations, they're reaching out to these tools, these digitized workflows to make those happen. So you have to start having a conversation about how do you work today with your internal or your external customer. What's going on? You know, do your due diligence on analysis and discovery so that you can design a solution that'll give them the tools where they want it, when they want it, how they want it, and then get the hell out the way.
Yep. No, totally makes sense. So Jason, as you were speaking, two things came to mind. Number one, when these companies are approaching you, they're probably coming from the perspective of, hey, I need to implement this technology. How do you influence leaders or, you know, a collective team to understand that it's more than just technology, that the people side matters for adoption?
What we like to do is to actually get leaders into the room, and whether it's a one-on-one interview with your stakeholder or it's a workshop where you are crowdsourcing the current pain of today.
Yeah.
What processes break down for you? Where are people complaining? Where's all the friction in your operations? And have them like put that up on the board, write it down, tell me about it, and then look back at it so that everybody can come to a consensus about, you know what? The status quo is driving us into the ground. We're burning our people out. We're not growing. Our competitors are eating our lunch. Yeah. So how we have to change. If you can get business leaders that are looking at these things to come to a consensus about change, then they can take ownership of that and derive a vision and be able to provide that to the end, their end users, the employees. And that's the people side, is creating that buy-in, yes, from the top down, but also understanding, where the pain is of everybody today.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. And Jason, I think this is a perfect transition into the slides. So go ahead and pull those up. And for those,
I think we wanted to start with this one, right?
Yeah, absolutely. For those of you on the line, Jason has several slides that he wants to kind of walk through. And at the end of the webcast, we'll also post them in a ChangeNerd community. If any of you have any questions, there's a chat feature at the bottom of your screen. Feel free to pop in a question, and I'll do my best to transition you into the conversation. So Jason, kind of walk us through this. What are some of the top problems with enterprise software adoption?
I'm sure that some of these are very evident to all of us. We all are around ProSci or Harvard Business Review, but you can see here that a lot of these things, none of these deal with the technology itself. None of these are about the tools. It's all about the people side. These all make the case then for change management. Without an executive sponsor, everybody agrees. PMI, everybody agrees. IBM says you're guaranteed to get failure. People get confused. They don't see the leaders talking the talk and walking the walk. And so they're like, why do I need to follow along with that? Not implementing any change management at all, you're guaranteed to lose money on the dollar in your investment in the software. Lack of stakeholder participation, like the VPs and the directors bought into it, means that the employees aren't going to buy into it. Again, it's like monkey see, monkey do. What are my leaders doing? Rushing to launch, we always get clients coming in here with their timetables already set in their head. Oh, yeah. And given they've had to plan what their roadmap looks like, so they're saying, okay, we're going to launch on this particular date, and then that pressures everything to go. And time is, I think, the most valuable resource up there with people. So that creates false starts. Your campaigns are rushed. People aren't absorbing and digesting that information. A lack of vision translates again to confusion, lack of adequate training, anxiety.
Jason, quick question. In my experience, some of the biggest delays in enterprise software implementation is it comes from integrations. So trying to kind of integrate a new tool with legacy processes. Oftentimes, when you're doing in the due diligence phase, it can seem like, oh, well, you only need maybe one or two integrations. But once you start doing the deep dive process work and you realize is it just me, or have you experienced that in the past?
I think
what's the biggest cause of delays?
The biggest cause of delays is, I think, the people working on the project are overworked, or there's not enough resources put to it. Yeah. And so decisions bottleneck, work gets stuck. It all lands on one person's desk who's unable to respond in a time frame that's adequate so that you can move forward on that originally designed project plan. And guess what? That one was rushed to launch as it was. And so now everything is tumbling into turmoil. And I really think it's important to step back and let proper discovery and analysis happen so you can design an effective plan and put the right resources to it before you start turning on switches and cranking out communication alerts and running to training. It's like all those things have to have the right amount of people and time. Yeah,
no, good point. And the other thing I want to highlight here is incentives. In your experience when you're working across, or with different organizations, are the project teams or the people within the company, are they doing this implementation work part-time, or is it full-time?
It's a little bit of both.
It's a little bit of both, yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because somebody will be like, well, I'm working on this. This is my highest priority project. Well, they've still got 9 that they're juggling besides that. And even though this is at the top of the list, they only have, 8 hours a week to devote to it, 12 hours a week to devote to it, because they've still got to keep all the other balls in the air.
That's true.
While they're doing it. So, but when I think about incentives here, it is more about how are you incenting end users, your employees, to perform their transition tasks? How are you incenting them to use the software, and what's in it for them? Is that message clear at the beginning? Yeah. How are you reinforcing that? Have you ever, let me turn this question around. How many of you have ever been in a situation where somebody says, well, we rolled this software out and nobody's using it, so we want to do some more training on it? And you're like, we did a slew of training on it. So training is usually the target that people use as, oh, that was inadequate the first time around, we got to redo it. But really it's because managers are not messaging in their one-on-ones about the tools. They're not using them in their team meetings. They're not using them in their daily workflows. Yeah. They're not driving. They're not telling their employees, go to training, watch that video. Did you do it? You didn't? We'll go back in there and take 20 minutes to do it.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Quick question. So you help implement Microsoft Teams, correct?
Yes, that's our flagship project right now. Are all about that.
Yeah, Microsoft Teams is super popular right now, and a lot of, I think Facebook has a similar product. Is it Facebook Workplace? So I think that product has had a lot of companies have had adoption issues based on the companies that I speak to. Microsoft Teams is doing better than it was when it first was rolled out. I think you hit on something. I think the key in implementing these solutions is really finding a way to integrate it into your way of working, right? So the conference calls, whether it be virtual or however, trying to integrate it into your daily work life is key. So I just wanted to kind of highlight that.
Yeah, and who I think is really the crux of that is the frontline manager. If the frontline manager hears from the CEO and the COO and their VP and their supervisor that all this needs to happen and to get their people through training, and guess what? Turn over your meetings in whatever format they were into Teams meetings. Start doing your dialogue in here. When people are pushing lots of dialogue around on email, tell them to move it to the chat on Teams. Drive the behaviors you want to see inside your unit. And then if all those things aren't in line and that manager doesn't execute on it, why is the employee?
Yeah, it totally makes sense. So I know you have some other slides. Can you share those as well?
Yeah, because we wanted to talk also about return on investment.
Yeah, that's huge.
And especially so let's take it from the two standpoints. One is you're consulting or providing support to a client company, and you want to make the case for this software to them.
Yep.
And then the other standpoint is going to be you're a change manager internal, and you're trying to make the case to your executive management team that we need to do this. And it's great to say, well, it's got the productivity, and it's got all these tools, and we're gonna love doing this stuff. But you know what? What's the bottom line for these? So of course, all of us are familiar with the idea that you take the benefits that arise from it and you divide that by the project cost, and that'll tell you what your return is. But most of the time, we're not factoring in the soft costs, the delays you mentioned,
yeah.
the additional people time, I'm kind of looking at my notes here. It's like all those things that add up, additional people that have to come on now to this, the degree of time away from people's productivity time to do their transitions and tasks. And then we're not also very good at factoring in what are the soft benefits of all of those. So great, that's giving us productivity. And yes, we're now able to digitize that workflow. What does that translate to? How much time are we saved? So thank you, Benjamin Franklin. Time is money.
Yeah.
If you can do an analysis to determine what your time saved is per worker, and then start multiplying that out per worker, per week, per year, now you can make a case for, look at all of this. Microsoft's been really good about building some specific tools that quantify this based on Forrester total economic impact studies. Yeah. And thank goodness for that. We have that, we leverage that heavily, so we can make that case. If you're internal, you have to go do some homework. Yeah. So you can find out what that is worth to the organization. And guess what? That ROI also assumes that you're doing change management. So if you're doing change management, you're probably going to achieve greater than 100% on your investment in the technology. And if you're not doing change management, you're guaranteed to lose money on the dollar for that. So it makes the case. Everybody on this call, I'm sure, can relate to this is the justification for why I'm here. And it's financial in basis. So if you can calculate what those are, you make a great case for keeping you on for years and years.
You know what? I love this slide. I love the simplicity of it. I think this also calls out the need to kind of upskill project team members and just maybe other functions on change management. We refer to it as like change capability. You're talking about the soft costs here. You can actually minimize that if others are familiar with change management, right? And you're not there to drive all the deliverables or facilitate all the meetings, because other people are familiar with a methodology. It doesn't really matter which one it is. They're able to kind of contribute to the work and minimize some of the soft costs. So I love this. I love this framework.
Mm-hmm. And getting down to quantify what each of these are is usually the trick. I can share some information here about how Microsoft does a lot of this. So you can benchmark that against what you're doing internally or with your clients, right? So in essence, this is saying, we know that the engineering and the building and implementing and licensing all the tech is going to be the vast majority of your project cost, roughly 50%. And your project management is going to slide in there to make sure that it all works effectively, and they're roughly 20%. And then ongoing support after the project is 10%. People usually leave out that orange piece of the pie. So if you again, change management being so critical to achieving the return on our investment should be equivalent to what you're paying out for the project manager. Roughly 20% on each of those slices. So build that into your budget when you go to take this to your executive management team or to your client to say, this is about where you should be. Now, obviously this changes, but it's a good rule of thumb to use.
No, this is awesome. I think you called out the major segment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you look at, again, here's some data from Forrester's Total Economic Impact Study that they did around specifically Microsoft collaboration software, so about Teams, SharePoint Online, and those additional like tools that are in there, like Planner, and a lot of things that exist in the Microsoft Office 365 suite today.
Yeah. They
were saying change management alone, you should look at a contract of about 50 grand. That's just to make sure that it gets that that's that 20% you're looking at.
Yep.
In the pie, and the gross margin of that you should figure should be about half of that, because with change management you're not paying out additional services. There's no servers that change managers wheel around in a suitcase behind them to get stuff done. You should roughly feel that about 50% of your contract should be profit. And the share of the project revenue overall then, because it's so much higher, should be between 30 and 60% of the entire project. So that makes the case directly for us as consultants.
Yeah.
And ongoing support change management, because you guys know change doesn't happen on day 1 of rollout. It doesn't happen on day 10. It doesn't happen on day 20.
Yeah.
It's ongoing and finding those specific areas that need the support, the department that didn't make the shift, the managers that didn't buy into it, the office that's just out there in rural America that didn't quite get the whole thing and didn't get enough attention paid to them. Yeah. There's going to need some additional support there, and look at your user per month fee. So take that times your number of employees that you're working off of, and that's about what you should look for ongoing support.
Cool. This looks good. It makes total sense.
Yeah, way to budget it out.
Yeah.
Let's see. The way that we get to this is, I think I talked about this before, is most companies are operating on, okay, we're running on this. We laid out our budget for the year, and we are going to, we're going to implement this and that and this and that. And here's all this change coming. And that change is harsh on users. We all know this, right? We're trying to help people through that process. The transition state is a loss of productivity. It's a loss of the work that we're doing. We're distracted. We're frustrated. It's hard on us. Nobody wants to go through that.
Yeah.
Nobody will go through that unless they come to a realization that the status quo is much more painful. So this again is where we go back to sitting down with your stakeholders, internal or external, and understanding their pain points today. Where do these processes fail? Yeah. Where are, you're passing paper forms around from like 6 different desks to get all these approvals. I submit one. I don't know whose desk it's on. It's been 3 weeks. I need this thing approved.
Yeah.
That guy's on vacation. What's going on? We don't think about that in the context of the pain of change. But if you can come to a realization of all of these, that yellow star right there is the realization that the pain of the status quo will outweigh over time the pain of change. Yeah. Then that can help usher people through. So having those, encapsulating those, surveying your employees to understand what those are on a regular basis just gives you ammunition when you come to making a case for enterprise software or any other project that you're associated with.
Yeah.
Because then you can tie that. And you know what? That pain is time somebody's spending. Thank you, Ben Franklin. That's money. Now you have another equation you can give to executive management as to the cost of not doing this project with my change management services in tow.
No, it totally makes sense. So Jason, let's transition to just me and you.
Yeah.
Remove the slides. I have a few more questions I want to ask you before
let's do that.
Before we conclude the webcast.
All right, let me stop sharing and go for it.
Yeah. So let's talk about Waterfall and Agile processes.
Mm-hmm.
Can you kind of highlight the difference for the group and also kind of share your what's worked best with Waterfall versus Agile processes?
So I think that a lot of people are making this shift.
Yeah.
The basic definition of the two is Waterfall is outlining a project plan with dependencies, and I've got to get this task done so that this person can do this task, so that this person can do this task, so this person can do this task, so we can get this communication out.
Yeah.
You know, like all these things. So there's all these dependencies that are in here, and it's all laid out in advance in a plan, which is very ideal and looks like it's just going to be hunky-dory.
It never is.
But these things inevitably fail. One person doesn't perform their task on time. One decision isn't made. One component of that is missing. Oh, we missed something in our initial analysis. Oh, we didn't factor in holidays that the company's taking. Now it's like these things compound. That's what leads to these delays, these soft costs and all of that. And so when you're trying to position these projects at the beginning, Waterfall has inherent problems in it that are just waiting as little time bombs to detonate.
Yeah.
That's the way I think of it. Now, Agile, on the other hand, is changing your frame of reference so that you are basically conducting iterative projects on smaller cycles. I think the recommended cycle is 2 weeks. So you're doing all of your analysis, design, and delivery all within a very short time frame. But you know what? You're not building the entire project all at once. You're building this small component.
Yep.
And then you're building this component, 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 and then you have the full picture of the whole project.
Yeah.
And this allows for those time bombs to detonate, but not completely destroy the entire plan and framework that you've laid out at the beginning. And it also allows you to poke your creativity through in better ways, because you can invest more in the short cycles, come back to the decision makers or the executive decision makers, the project team, and deliver something. They can give you immediate feedback that you can implement on the next cycle, and you can build that and then keep on going. Yeah. So it's much more open to client input on shorter versions. It helps to avoid those pitfalls that are inherent in Waterfall.
Yeah, no,
I think that a lot of companies are trying to make that shift. Even here at Core, we haven't completely made the shift either.
Yeah.
There are some projects that speak to this because the end product itself is not defined specifically. You can't point to it and say, "Oh, that's what we're buying."
Yeah.
Microsoft's, Teams is a package, but it's everything else that's inside of it.
Yeah.
That hopefully you're uncovering these additional workflows, these integrations that you can piece together in a much easier way, Agile-wise, to make happen. We're not 100%.
Yeah.
But I think that we're making the shift over so that we can do iterative deliveries much faster, and keep the client happier, involved, engaged, making decisions, so that you don't have to drag them to a monthly steering committee review of the project and prepare, and here's our slide deck on how things are, because we don't have anything really to show you. We're just going to tell you about all the stuff we've done so far.
Exactly. Sounds like you've been there and done that.
I have. And I think for change managers specifically, Agile works much better, because you can take what your project teams are creating and right off the bat, create a artifact around that end users can consume, or tie it to your plans for champions in the organization, ambassadors. You can even bring them into the picture. How cool would it be, champions of a particular department you're trying to build a workflow for, to have their input at regular stages and build that to their specification much better than running away, building everything, and then going, here it is, and then going, well, wait a minute. I thought I was going to do this, and I thought I was going to do this, and I thought I was going to do this. Now it's too late in the process to that. And now you have to change order to make it fit what they wanted. Yeah. So it just gets cumbersome.
Yeah, no, I totally understand. So this is my last question, Jason. For the companies that are successfully implementing enterprise software, what are the 2 or 3 things that they're doing from a leadership standpoint, to the way the project team is working? Like, what are those 2 or 3 best practices that you've noticed?
So number 1, they set out at the beginning to define the value of this widget to their organization. And that value isn't just, well, it's going to cost us X in subscription fees per month, and we'll be able to do this. They break it down and incorporate into that their vision of these solutions. So it becomes that value statement at the beginning. Read that as a vision statement. Read it however you want. Encapsulates the reason to drive everybody through the transition to the end state. Here's where we're going. Yeah. And that translates down to, as you guys know, the end user saying, oh, okay, they've got an idea of where they're going, and I can't see the 50,000 foot level. I'm kind of trying to look over my cube. I can't quite see that, but they have an idea and it's going in that direction, and they reinforce it every time it comes around. There are leaders inside of each one of those divisions or business units, lines of business, that are articulating that same value statement, that are driving the message down. So that's the number 1, is the value statement being driven down. And then number 2, they're building the right resources underneath the user. So like the user's in the middle, they're getting this message from up here, and underneath they've got the tools that they need. They've got the training in the modalities that they need to do, in the learning styles that they need to affect. I'm visual. Just give me a quick start guide. Oh, I'm kinesthetic. I gotta go to on-site training. Whatever it is, all that stuff is at scale, and there's different resources, and it's constantly fed and reiterated. It just doesn't get, oh, there's the book of it all. It's thrown on the shelf and done. Yeah. So downward messaging, resources at the bottom, and then your manager's hitting you with the message. The local influencer, your champion, is hitting you with the message, the water cooler. Your people are talking about it. You're driving that change underneath the user, and you're driving the change from the top. Those two, this is the juxtaposition here. Because if any one of them's out of the way, you can ignore it. But if you're sandwiched, you're caught.
Yep.
Okay, I'll do it.
Jason, hey, thank you so much for having this conversation. You're an excellent presenter. I love the way you present. It's awesome. And thanks for creating the slides. I'm sure that members within the community are going to really, really appreciate it, man. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. And for those of you on the line, thank you as well for taking time out of your schedules to join this conversation. So this concludes the webcast.